What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Let's Talk About It podcast with Pastor Lee.
Yep.
Yep.
Not just Pastor Lee.
Oh, no, it's just Pastor Lee.
No, it's just Pastor Lee.
We got Aiden over here, and then I'm on soundboard.
Yep. So, guys, we are here talking about politics tonight because we had Super Tuesday this past week. And so it's one of those, because last week when we talked, politics is one of those issues that we just don't talk about. So it was one of those topics that let's talk about things that we don't talk about. And politics was one of those things. And so we talked about some of the reasons, right, last week of why we don't talk about politics. Like, what were some of those reasons you guys remember?
It's like the awkwardness. Like, didn't we talk about how it is at like family like gatherings, like Thanksgiving, like you don't talk about politics because like starts chaos, starts fights within the family.
Yeah. Starts fights. We've got the other thing was we were worried about offending people, right?
Yep.
So like, are we going to offend people if we talk about politics? And why do you think politics can be offensive?
Because everybody has their different viewpoints.
But everyone also feels that their viewpoints are the only ones and that they should be the only ones that are right.
Yeah.
Okay, so only your viewpoint is what's right.
Yeah, it's like a battle.
Dude, we got a number of people in here tonight, and that is awesome. Ben Singer, great to see you. Meryl May, Ali Shimchek, Hannah Kissimus. Ty came back in. Jeremy Nowak's here with us. Vogues is here with us. Mari LaRubio is here. Mia's up in here. Everybody's here. Yeah, all you guys are here tonight. This is great. Sierra, good to see you guys. Jeremy said people are scared of facts. That's another reason why politics are kind of scary and things like that. And so, again, we just had Super Tuesday. I mean, it's kind of the thing is like politics is one of those things that we need to be able to talk about. We need to be able to have the conversation because without talking about it, you're kind of just, I don't know. Like what happens when you don't talk about politics?
It gets to, I don't know.
I feel like you don't get to know people as well. You don't get to know like what they believe, because a lot of things that go into politics is more than just what party they want. It's more of their morals and what they believe in on like a bigger level than just like, you know.
So that's interesting actually, because I think like your morals and things like that. I honestly feel like, well, it's funny because I'll give you an example. I worked at a church in Green Bay for a year, vicarage, and I remember whenever you find an LCMS church, strong chance, that's Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, for anybody that doesn't know that. That's what Trinity is. And there's a strong chance that most of the people in the room are going to be
Conservatives.
Yeah, conservatives, Republicans, that kind of thing. Well, there was one woman, and they helped with the bulletin crew every single day, who was a Democrat, and it was just known that she was like involved in the like politics and stuff up in that area. But it's kind of fascinating because it was like oh another example, because the way people treated her, it was kind of just weird. But it's kind of like The Blind Side. You remember The Blind Side? And
like the lady or
Kathy Bates.
Oh, yeah. I am.
Kathy Bates. I need to tell you something.
I am a Democrat.
I'm a Democrat. like what a moment, because that's the kind of thing. All right. So we had some comments. All right. One of the things we're going to ask of the comments is, we believe you should talk about politics, and probably some of these comments are not things that are going to stir up conversations. So that's kind of, I think that kind of contributes to why we don't talk about politics, is that we kind of bash people for politics instead of hearing them, having a conversation. I hate to use a religious word, but maybe converting them, even like just having that where you find a middle ground or actually are able to talk a little bit. Yeah.
I think I was going to say that there's like this kind of common misconception that you have to be an enemy with a person that's not either Republican or Democrat, depending on where you vary, or if you're in the middle, you're always getting pulled to one side or the other, and there's always that constant battle. But like, honestly, everybody's just trying to do the same thing. They're trying to make this place better. They're trying to make it a better place to live. And overall, we're all trying to achieve the same goal. We're just doing it in a different way.
For sure. Actually, I remember, and I can't remember what election it was. I think it was Obama Romney. So when those guys were going against each other, I remember there was one of the presidential debates, because back in the day, like there was actually like fruitful debates, because I don't think that really happens. And now it's just about like who can slam the other one the best and things like that. But it was kind of fascinating because I sat there and I said, okay, I know for sure. I mean, the whole time, again, grew up in Georgia, pretty conservative guy in general. So I was like leaning toward Romney anyway, but certainly wanted to like, I think it was actually, that was my first time being able to vote, was 2008. So I was really trying to like get up on the game and what all's going on and things like that. And so I remember listening to them and actually being able to hear them, and just in their policies, you knew they were coming at things from two different ways, but they both wanted exactly what we were talking about, Aiden. They both wanted good things. Romney believed as a governor and as a Republican, that word republic means like that the states are kind of the ones, you're an association of states. So Romney believed that the federal government's job was kind of there to help, but not to run everything. And so he thought things were best done at the state level. So especially when healthcare was a big issue, he talked a lot about what he did in Massachusetts. And so that was his perspective. Obama, on the other hand, was the Democrat, the federal perspective of we need a bigger federal government. We can accomplish healthcare at a national level and things like that. And it was just a fundamental difference. Both of them thinking wholeheartedly that was the best approach, but coming from two completely different ways. But again, back in that day is the same thing as today. You would have thought, if you would have said, I'm voting Obama, like in this atmosphere, people are like, and thought all of a sudden the worst stuff about you. We got some comments coming in too. I've talked a little bit. Ben said a lot of times people don't stand up for what's right, but rather what defends their political views. Okay. So it's almost like I have to go to that party. I have to think in line with that. Noah said, when we stop talking about politics, we stop caring. 100% agree with that. I think when we don't talk, we become apathetic, and when we become apathetic, we become owned by whoever. Jeremy said, if we agree with Canada on social issues, but they're not a Christian, what should we do? Great question. Because again, I talked about 2008. One of my biggest hangups was Romney is a Mormon, right? And as we kind of understand, it's a conversation for another time, but it was really the first time there was a non-Christian candidate up there, because Mormons, again, according to the Mormon belief, their statements, they don't believe in the divinity of Christ. They follow Jesus Christ. They think he's a prophet, but they can't call him God. They'll call him God's son, just like you're God's son, I'm God's son, but they won't call the divinity. But anyway, so it was a challenge to me. Like, what do I do then if they're not a Christian? What should we do? And for that, it was kind of a saying, God puts in place the leaders, and there's a level of respecting them to an extent, right? You don't want to be in 1940s Germany and respecting the leader at that point, but there's a level of God's going to use whoever he puts, and he puts them to exercise the sword and things like that. So it's an interesting one. Carolyn Rich is here. Good to see you. Wow. Lots of comments tonight. Good. Apparently politics is something people want to talk about. This is good. So can you talk about our responsibility when defending our political views as Christians while not holding non-Christians to the same standard? I tend to think of Paul when he tells us not to argue because their faith is futile. So Ben is referring to a passage in Scripture where Paul basically says, if you're trying to make people outside of the church believe as you do or act as you do because of what you believe about Jesus Christ, it's kind of pointless. Like Paul really says this. He says, quit trying to make people outside of the church or quit thinking that they could act and behave the way that you do. You just have different grounds on things. So I'm kind of wondering how that does kind of play out then on defending your political views as a Christian. There's actually some really good stuff out there. So what would be the one topic or issue that you feel like is always talked about with this conversation?
Pro-life, pro-choice.
Yeah, pro-life, pro-choice. And so what's been fascinating is actually a teacher at Concordia, I saw her post about it, but there's a Facebook group called Secular Pro-Life. And that word secular means non-Christian or non-religious. And so it was an interesting one for seeing that a lot of times you're able to talk about these things because from that perspective of what if God was involved? What if Jesus wasn't involved? And I think that's where you have to start thinking about some of these things.
I think a lot of it too, you just have to have respect for everybody else in this whole political party nonsense, because like a lot of people, might not be Christians, so you can't go into it thinking that, oh, everybody's a Christian, everybody's going to have the same beliefs as me. You just you don't necessarily have to agree with them, but you just have to have the respect to have that conversation.
I think respect is huge. Yeah. With any
Love
of
and
these
respect.
topics. Love and respect. Yeah. So like, but respect, I mean, how do you expect to have a conversation with someone if they won't, what happened?
All right, so we just got the
Something
stream
happens.
back up.
All right, we're back.
Sorry about that, guys.
Talking politics, talking apathy. I'm glad we're watching the live stream so we know it actually dropped and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would have been really bad.
Just keep going.
Yeah,
Thank you to
Like,
everybody on the recording that is staying patient. We obviously were facing some technical difficulties.
Yes.
Yeah. So where were we at, guys? Help us get back to where we were at and what we were talking about.
Respect.
Respect. Yeah. How do you expect to be able to have a conversation with anybody if you don't have respect? So if like, and that doesn't have to just go with politics. It goes for anything, you know. If I don't feel respected, I'm not going to talk to you.
Right.
You know, and so especially like, again, some of the comments we had in the first half of this so far, maybe not the best, you know, to be able to start out with. Like if someone kind of just, well, you just believe blah, blah. Okay. All right. We can't have a civil conversation. I'm not going to talk with you about this.
Right.
That's something we get confused though with, like, is what is actually like I could just say a healthy like conversation with someone, like with respect, and then what is just screaming at someone, like trying to shove something down their throat. At what point do we see that though?
Yeah. I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean? At what point do we see that?
Like in today's world, like we're seeing ideas almost get pushed upon the other party. Like you'll see, it's hard to think about this and like not get too into one topic, but like,
No, but pick one. Yeah. Yeah.
like if like for the pro-choice
Yeah.
so if you're pushing that upon someone, what's the difference between pushing that on someone and then like saying, like giving that, like having a healthy conversation without judgment upon that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so it's interesting because this one, I let these guys know before we even started. This morning in my 8th grade religion class, we had some kids, they asked me some politics questions. And so one of these questions was even about the issue of pro-life, pro-choice. And I think it's a matter of finding the common ground. Again, like how do you talk about pro-choice without talking about your beliefs? Again, I recommend the Secular Pro-Life on Facebook and things like that.
Video
is a great
paused.
way to think about it. So what you're really concerned about is how do you talk about being pro-life and with a pro-choice person? I mean, that sounds like that's what the fear is.
Well, it's just how do you have that conversation without trying to shove it down somebody's throat?
All we've ever known is like pushing opinions upon someone. That's like our generation.
Interesting. Okay. So, that's interesting then. Cause like, I mean, it's really just how do you have a conversation, a respectful conversation in general? So like, why do you, I mean, well, this is fascinating actually. So this is what I told my 8th grade class this morning, and you guys have heard me say it before, is that I do not believe, as a Christian, coming from a Christian standpoint at least, I do not believe a Christian's goal at the end of the day, and if we do this, then we're done. I do not believe the goal of Christianity is to make abortion illegal. I don't think that's the end goal. I think the end goal of Christians is to make abortion unthinkable, right? So, I mean, that's my thing is, so like, I almost think we're better in this place right now. Yeah. I think we're better. I think we're better in the place that we're at now in trying to do everything we can to help people to not ever have to make this choice, than we would be. I think if all of a sudden abortion's illegal, we'd feel content. We're like, okay, our job's done. It's illegal. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, and granted, I know that the left will argue this way of, well, just because you make something illegal doesn't mean it's not going to happen, right? The same thing with weed, same thing with guns, things like that. But like, but I think I do think it should be, you know, illegal. I don't like it, but I think ultimately my goal is to make it unthinkable. So what can I do to make sure I support people enough that if they, for whatever reason, are having a child that they feel like they can't bring into the world because of financial issues or whatnot, or they don't feel supported or things like that, or they're worried about getting kicked out of the house. I think as Christians, what should we be doing? Stepping up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe maybe that is politics. Maybe that is policies of being able to come in alongside of people and helping them and things like that. You know what I mean?
Have you ever had a situation where you've had to talk about politics and it's gotten to more of a argument than it has a productive conversation?
Probably in high school, but I went to a very liberal college. And so like they always joked, there were the Democrats at least always had the oh my gosh.
What?
I feel so violated.
Especially been doing leg day. No day.
This camera angle is way too low. All right.
I like it.
So on my campus, the college Democrats would always have the shirt, a bright blue campus and a big red state, because saying they're all pretty much Democrats, things like that. And then the college Republicans would have a bright red dot on a bright blue campus, so it's just kind of funny. But like, we learned though how to have healthy dialogue. At the end of the day, like the healthiest dialogue is for you to be able to understand, really trying to understand where the other person is coming from. And it doesn't mean you have to adopt what they're saying,
Right.
but try and understand where they're coming from, what's behind something. And so my college experience really helped me in having healthy, respectful dialogue. And some of the best conversations I actually get to have over Facebook or even Facebook Messenger these days is actually with some of those folks from Birmingham Southern, because it was just a great, healthy opportunity. So I would say, actually, no, I don't get into too many inflamed conversations about politics.
And I think that's kind of interesting, because I feel like as we've been growing up, I don't know if this is for you, but this is for me, that everybody's kind of tried to shape my opinion to be like their own, because we're kids and they want to teach us. So they want to make sure that we're in the right or whatever.
Family for sure, I feel like does that.
Yeah.
Like I guess that like
sure. Yeah.
that those relatives you see at those holidays definitely kind of like push that upon you, or make sure it's known that it is of you type deal.
Yeah. And so again, like it goes back to that Blindside movie that we were referencing.
Yep.
If all of a sudden you're a Democrat, that's like coming out of the closet, it's in the same level somehow. And it's just kind of, that's a little fascinating to me, I guess. Yeah. Well, Will, they're going to see your comment. Like we're talking about it. You got it. Yeah. So, I was like, you're spreading the word, buddy. But as we're talking about politics, then, and it comes to this conversation of just trying to understand there. So they're trying to push these ideas, and that's kind of what's happening this morning in 8th grade religion. I was sitting there going, there was a girl, bless her heart, didn't know how presidential terms worked. So I said, I mentioned, like, there's no legitimate third party candidate really this time around. I mean, last time there was a guy, Evan McMullen, who was strong chance of him winning Utah because he was from Utah, but he was running third party. He got a fair amount in there, more probably than others. And there's been a couple, I want to say in the Bush-Gore election, there was a third party candidate that either came really close to winning a state or actually won a state. So it's kind of interesting to see that in there. This time there's not. I mean, it's really going to be a Republican candidate, a Democratic candidate. And that Republican candidate's going to be Trump. And when I did that, this 8th grade girl goes, he's running again? And like, I have a very politically minded student in there that kind of shook his head. I was like, that's how it works. Like, they're allowed 2 terms of 4 years, but it's a matter of educating yourself and actually knowing what's going on. And that's where, like, earlier we were talking about the fundamental difference of a Democrat and a Republican. And just without talking about what we talked about earlier, what would you say are the big differences between Republicans and Democrats?
Like, I would say, like, their views are way different.
I think it's government involvement and non-government involvement.
And that's ultimately where it gets to. But I think where Clayton was coming from is the popular opinion.
Yeah.
Right. So, and actually there's other groups like pro-life Democrats, because they feel like they have to be able to say that, because all of a sudden the Democratic Party is just associated with being pro-choice, and that's not a reality. And there are probably pro-choice Republicans out there too, would be my guess. And the same thing with guns. Like, there's probably different perspectives, even though I think there's actually probably very similar perspectives in most of America when it comes to gun rights and things like that. Like, especially being here in Texas, we get that. Like, yeah, we do think people should be checked, and we do think there should be laws in place. We just don't think they should be taken. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's really the extreme side of it. I mean, in education, you'll learn this one too. Everyone believes the same thing about education for the most part. I will say Trump's choice of Betsy DeVos challenged that this time around, because she was definitely a different person than we've ever seen as the Secretary of Education in the country. But it was just kind of interesting to see that.
Do you think that there's a stigma between or like when it comes to political stuff, like, oh, that person's a liberal, so I'm just going to view them as this, or oh, that person's a conservative. I'm going to view them as this.
Yeah. Well, and the same thing goes for like LGBTQ and marriage and other kind of rights and things like that. And that is very much typically a left perspective on things. But I do think that's what we do is, oh, you're a Democrat. I assume I know a lot about you. You know, and the same thing when it came to Republican. Oh, I know a lot about you. You're a conservative Republican from Georgia. That's the way people would kind of treat me. But like I said earlier when we were talking, I consider myself a moderate because sometimes I'll say things and a conservative will think I'm a liberal and a liberal will think I'm conservative in the moment. It's just kind of hilarious to me.
I feel like that's almost how the majority of our generation is. Like they're kind of in the middle on a lot of things.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of one side or the other.
Because it seems so extreme.
Yeah.
Like both sides.
It's
just
super extreme.
I guess that's what we see though in the media side. The media side of it for sure.
Well, especially 2010, that happened with the Tea Party and the creation of that. And there was a little success, and that's the way people understood conservatives. Like that was what they were all about. And it's just kind of fascinating. And well, like this is what I was taught too, was that the primaries, which we're in right now for the Democratic side, this is what will always happen. At the very beginning, whoever is the furthest on the ends gets a lot of attention. Okay, so who's the most conservative or who's the most liberal? And then all of a sudden, when it comes close to the election, we're like, oh, we need a moderate. Mm-hmm. Like, so that the Republicans might want to vote for a Democrat or the Democrats might want to vote for a Republican. And it's always kind of fascinating the way that works. Because like, for instance, Biden getting things was kind of shocking a little bit, I think, because like, he's a bumbling old man. But like, when you watch the debates, it was kind of interesting where he wouldn't finish a thought sometimes. And I had Democratic friends pointing this out to me. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Where are the comments at? What are you guys thinking out there? We got a handful of you guys in here with us when we're talking about politics. What else do you guys think when it comes to politics?
What do you mean? Like,
we could go back to what you talked about with the Republican Democrat thing, right? So like really in the end, how did you describe the difference between Republicans and Democrats?
Well, I said obviously government involvement and not so much government involvement, because I feel like with a lot of the political views that go to both sides, there's a drastic difference in government involvement.
And I would say that's a good way to see it, especially when you break into three parties. So what would be the third biggest party in the United States? Starts with an L.
The liberals.
No.
Close. Libertarian. Yeah, Libertarian's kind of the third biggest, and they usually have a big candidate, but this year it's not a big candidate. And so like theirs is also, so I would say it's this way, right? Democrats want federal government involvement. Mm-hmm. Republicans want state government involvement. They don't want big government. They don't want the United States government in everybody's fingers. And the Libertarians don't want any government. They're not anarchists, but they don't think the government really has a place in an individual's life, a private citizen's life. And so it's just kind of three different perspectives on government. Mm-hmm. And that's where I always say I typically operate conservatively Republican, because I believe states are much more qualified to handle the on the ground stuff. I don't think things are more efficient at a higher level, typically.
And I also think that, I mean, at least from the viewpoint of like my grandparents, especially, the way that they view a lot of their political views are based off of how they were raised, but also based off their like income. It was always the lower class would always vote Democrat, and the upper class would always vote Republican, and that's how it always was, and it would never change, and didn't really matter what your views were, but since you were a blue-collar worker, you would always vote Democrat, or if you were a white-collar worker, you'd vote Republican.
And that's interesting, because right now, what is the Southeast known for? Like who like which party gets the Southeast usually?
Republican, right?
Yeah, usually the Republican. So go 60 years ago, what was the Southeast known for?
It was the Democrats, but didn't the party switch? Like conservatives used to be Democrats, and the Republicans were more of the.
That was a long time.
It was a really long time ago, but when was
like
that
early? That was like early 1900s.
Early 1900s.
Yeah. Into though, like Alabama, was it Alabama or Georgia? I can't remember. It was Georgia, my home state, and I believe it was 2010, had its first Republican. Was it first Republican governor? I think it was since Reconstruction.
Jeez,
2010.
that's crazy.
Yeah. So over 100 years of a Democratic governor in Georgia until Sonny Perdue, whenever he got elected. I don't remember which one it was, but it was kind of fascinating because it was known, and I think it connects a little bit with what you said about the poverty, and so and that's where things did start to kind of shift under FDR. Great president, Democratic president, was doing a lot of things, and then things kind of switched. As it moved from that point, and then you have JFK in the 60s as Democrat, but then it starts kind of shifting to your big Republican. Who's the biggest Republican there ever was?
Abe Lincoln.
No, well, yes, but no. In the recent years.
Oh, in the recent years?
Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan is kind of seen as the
That's
Republican.
before
I was not alive.
Boomers.
So Vogel is asking us.
He doesn't acknowledge it.
Vogel is asking us, how would it be in a perfect world, or what do you feel would make things better? Vogel, I jumped to the pastor answer really quickly. In a perfect world, there are no rulers and kings except for God Himself, and that's where you go to the book of Judges. It's kind of complete irony as you watch it. It says, in Israel there was no king. And so God provided them a judge to be ruler over them. And it was like just kind of fascinating because they did have a king, and it was God. So I would say in a perfect world, and that's what we're told, right? When Jesus come back, that's the reality. There's one king, and it's going to be very known who that king is. The Lamb's going to be reigning on his throne. But what would make it better? Well, I'll go to you guys because I think you guys have some good answers there. What do you guys think would make it better in this world and conversation about politics?
You go first.
Definitely don't be shy of the topic. And don't be afraid to put your own views into it, especially bringing in your religion of like anyone can bring in their religion into their politics. Like that's the thing we fear is that bringing in of our other worldly views into our politics and our own state type deal. That's what I feel it is.
Yeah. So don't be afraid of the topic. Don't be afraid of your own perspective. Like, what else is going to help Aiden moving forward? What's going to make it better?
Obviously, like we said, respect.
Yeah.
Respect is a big thing. You have to have respect for everybody because no matter their viewpoint, they're still a human being,
Yeah.
Everybody, we're all in it together, whether we agree on certain things or not. And also just obviously being willing to have the conversation, but in the same sense, we need to take things that people say with a grain of salt.
Oh, interesting.
So we don't always have to take it to the extreme.
Sure. Yeah. Well, in this sense, right? Like this is a phrase I use often. I am not responsible to an extent. Don't take it too far. I am not responsible for someone else's feelings. So if I say something, I'll clarify with this. I am only responsible for my actions and my words. So if for some reason I am like straight up bashing someone or being disrespectful or using my words to kind of down people, yeah, I'm totally responsible for those and I got to apologize for them. But like, let's say that I say, I believe I'm pro-life or something like that, or I think pro-life's the way to go, and this is what I am standing. And all of a sudden, someone's super offended, and they're all hurt by me, and all this other stuff. I'm not responsible for their feelings in that one. So I don't. It's going to what you're saying of not feeling you have to own in that grain of salt kind of piece.
Yeah.
But I love the respect piece. I think the respect piece is everything when it comes to this conversation about politics. If you're not respectful, like, you can't have any conversation.
Yep.
And I don't understand why you would ever treat someone with less dignity than you would hope that someone would treat yourself. You know what I mean? So everyone's deserving of dignity, and no matter what perspective they come from. Maybe they're the most liberal, homosexual, pro-choice person you've ever met in your lifetime, and your whole life you've been taught, oh, I can't talk to them. I'm so different from them. They're going to hate me, blah, blah, blah. Throw that out the window. Yeah. Have a conversation. Love a person, end conversation, respect them, give them space. If you want to be heard, they have to be heard. Right. And that means you have to listen, you know?
And I think my last thing would be to be informed about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Not base all of your opinions off of emotion.
And so this is a good one to kind of close with too then. How do you stay informed? What are legitimate ways to be informed?
More than one site or whatever.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at the news, don't just watch Fox. You got to get your different views in to see each point of view. Because I saw how like this accident happened, but the other person on the other side of on the freeway or whatever saw how the accident happened too. It's two
Sure.
completely
Two
different
perspectives,
views. Two
yeah.
perspectives.
Yeah, because there's obvious difference between CNN and Fox. There's, it's going to be skewed both ways, and both of them are going to bash each other. So you got to find that news source that is going to have the facts, but at the same time might not have that political skewed towards it. It just has the straight facts.
Yeah.
That way you can base your own opinion off of it instead of taking what that other person's opinion is and using it as your own kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think my biggest thing, especially election season, especially anybody who's voting for the first time, my advice would be watch the debates. Watch the debates, the whole debate. Watch it. If you're watching any videos afterward, watch them lie to you. Like, not the candidates, watch the news stations lie to you. And this is how you tell. You guys are all smart. You all know about video editing and everything. Mm-hmm. So if there's a moment where there's a candidate speaking and all of a sudden it's a whoo, and then you have another piece of the conversation, they've edited out a significant chunk of that conversation that was happening live. So try and find it to where you can watch the whole thing live and hear it as it's going, so you can form your opinion about what's going down. And then another place is actually go to candidates' websites. So actually see what they say are their policies and things like that, because Facebook will tell you all day long that this is what so-and-so believes, but both sides are going to just try and trash you in videos and things like that. Yep. So I think that's the biggest things. Yeah. Get the people talking from both sides, but actually hear from the candidates themselves. Watch complete videos of town halls or other things or rallies, and that'll really help you get a feel for whatever candidate it is that you're kind of interested in.
Cool.
Yeah. Guys, we just talked about something that
we don't talk about.
We don't talk about.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, we talked about politics, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry for the technological issues tonight, but I think
he's not tech savvy.
Clayton keeps saying this. He didn't tell you that he renamed himself Lee tonight. So
it's not funny. That's like an old man joke.
You just laughed.
I laugh at everything.
So anyways, but I enjoyed this, especially being able to close it out like this. I thought it was a really good conversation. I think our stuff is coming together a little bit more. So we'll continue talking about stuff that we don't typically talk about. Yep. And we'll let you know what that topic is coming up.
Yep. Let us know if you have any ideas too for future podcasts, but there it is.